Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you for joining us early morning today. We have a very special guest today and this topic is very, very interesting. This is a topic in Indian context we don't understand much. This is, it's going to be all about food energetics, how, this is a little different concept from how we look at our foods today. It's, we look at it more from the perspective of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and, all these quantitative elements, not the qualitative elements. So energetics is more about qualitative elements of foods, which is also more of a nutritive kind of aspect of looking at foods. It's not something that you immediately start grasping all these concepts of energy from the food perspective. It's more of practical experience with foods, having your experience in terms of how do you feel when you have specific kinds of food. So the science is more of on the intuitive side, but we have a very special guest today, Kimberly, who will be talking about this concept, and she is an expert into it. Like, I'm quite excited to have her there. I think she's there. I'll let her in and then we'll start. So I think Kimberly should be there in a moment or so. Hey, hi Kimberly. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Good, great. Thank you so much for being with us today. I had been highly looking for having this live with you for a very long time. And
Yes.
just because your knowledge into energetics is just amazing. I keep following you and reading a lot about you. So, okay, let's start. Like, I'll first introduce you. I'm still about to introduce you. And then,
Okay.
all yours. You can just help us understand who you are and how you got into all this and what energetics is and all that. Yeah. So, okay. So Kimberly is a wellness coach. She's a TCM food therapist, a macrobiotic counselor. She's also an emotional anatomy consultant, energy medicine practitioner, and also an author. She's based in Australia and she's joining us today from Sydney. She conducts workshops on energetics of nutrition and food therapy in yoga trainings and workshops. She had a health food store in plant-based nutrition cooking studio in China. Kimberly has an intuitive sense for cooking with variety of natural foods and applying 5 elements theory. She actively talks about relation of food and cooking in relation to Qi, which is all about energetics that Kimberly will be enlightening us today. And she transforms health, mood, and emotional well-being with energetics. And that's not all. She's also into Hatha Yoga, Yin Yoga, Qigong, and meditation practices. So I think you've covered everything about what energetics can be all about. So help us understand, Kimberly, your journey and what energetics is like in Indian scenario, how we can educate people to at least start understanding energetics from the very ground level. So all yours.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to connect as well. And we have shared passions in food and health and healthy living. So my journey began in 2007 when I went to China. And was living in Shanghai, actually Hangzhou, which is another city, and then Shanghai. And I was always a foodie and big to exercise and fitness and yoga and things like that. But I was eating anything and everything, just eating and then exercising. And then when I discovered Chinese medicine and the 5 elements, I had a teacher and a mentor and an acupuncturist. I started to feel more about what she recommended. So, we have different constitutions. And she was telling me what kinds of foods to eat. So I would go home and self-experiment and practice and cook many different vegetables and ingredients and herbs. And I saw firsthand the benefit or the changes in my body. So that's how I got into the understanding the impact of food, but also the energy of different foods. And a lot of the traditional... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so just sorry, I'm just cutting you there. So I was just talking to our audience, talking of energetics to be more open and mindful of this concept. And because this concept is nothing to do about what you read in the books about calories, proteins, and all that. This concept is more about how you feel when you have specific things. So, it's much bigger connect with you rather than just knowing something in the books and just starting to apply that. Yeah, am I right?
Exactly. Yes, 100%. So yeah, a lot of us, when we learn nutrition, I was going to say in the West, but everywhere nowadays, when we learn nutrition, it's exactly like you said, it's micronutrients and macronutrients and proteins, fats, carbs, vitamins, minerals, and water. But it doesn't invite us to feel the food. We don't talk a lot about seasons in Western nutrition. And the idea of food as energy is very separate as a
Vague.
concept.
It's very vague concept, yes.
Yeah, but you can't, I mean, you can teach it, but you have to eat it and
Experience it.
experience it.
Yes.
And it comes a lot with the ingredients itself, the season, but also how you cook it. So I usually give an example of a carrot. You could have the carrot raw, or you could grill it or bake it. You could steam it, or you could have it raw in a salad, or pickles or something. So there's different ways you can change the energy of food. Sorry, I can't hear you very well. Yeah, I can hear you. Yep. Hmm.
We directly relate to it. Before I hand it over, this has been my
Hmm.
personal experience also, because when I started macrobiotics, and then before that I had been doing certain diets, and had been very uh, okay. I think there are some issues with my
I
audio.
can't hear
Am
you
I
very well.
okay? Okay. Let me just see if there is anything.
Yeah, it just cuts a little bit.
Hello, is it okay?
Yep. Yep. I can hear you fine. It just cuts a little bit sometimes.
Okay.
That's better.
So
Thank you.
yeah, that's better. Okay.
Yep.
So the experiences that I had, like, what I had been doing as per the modern nutrition initially, and then when I got into energetics, within 1 year, I saw drastic changes happening to me, not just at the physical level, but mind changing, emotions changing, which generally you do not experience with the way how the modern nutrition works.
Hmm.
But this was, again, I said, what I experienced was more of a feeler concept rather than a gross concept. Yeah. So, but since I could understand, because I could feel it, but for somebody who is still to yet to start with this concept, what would you,
Hmm.
how would you explain this concept to them? How can they actually get to understand in daily life, what energetics is?
Sure. I would start with fresh foods. So
Hmm.
trying to eat as much fresh, whole food ingredients. So that just means not no, but reducing frozen
Hmm.
foods, fast foods, cafe, restaurant foods, takeaway foods, junk food, of course,
Hmm.
snacks and things like that. So if you can have fresh fruits, vegetables, grains, and then whatever protein of your choice, meat or beans or tofu, by having fresh food, you start to feel different anyway, because that food has energy or chi, or you can call it prana or life inside, like a whole broccoli has life. But
Yes.
deep fried, I don't know, fast food, fried chicken is not going to have much life force in it. So if people can really simple, fresh, that's got energy in it, and we can just use the word energy. We don't have to say chi. We don't have to say, in Japanese it's ki, or in prana, in India it's
Yeah.
prana. So
In
just
India,
think of,
prana,
oh,
yes.
food has life in it when it's
Yeah.
fresh. Obviously, freshly picked is even best. If you grow your own food or herbs, a little pot of something, that's even better. Then you can start to feel the freshness of food. So that would be the first step. Um, Moving away from processed food, packaged food. And as you said, when you start to feel the energy of food, that will happen when you move to more fresh foods. If you're already
Right.
eating fresh foods and you're watching this and you're pretty healthy already, then the next step I would suggest would be just experimenting different ways of cooking your food. Um, and it doesn't matter if you're vegetarian or a meat eater or a pescatarian, we can see it most with vegetables. So if you start adding more variety in your vegetables and just experimenting different ways to cook, your sweet potato or your beans or your rice, just and being really mindful of how you feel afterwards. So I know in India you have a lot of millet, and I'm quite jealous because you have many different colors of millet and rice and basmati rice and beautiful
Yes.
grains.
We
So
have a lot of
a lot of
variety.
people
Yeah.
a lot of people eat very narrow and they don't explore. So
Mhm.
we can start to explore different, just basic ingredients, day to day,
Mhm.
daily foods, but whole and fresh. And so I would go with, and it's based a lot on macrobiotics, but grains, whole grains, vegetables, a little bit of fruit, and then, as I said, any protein, and just try and get more variety of fresh foods. Grains aren't fresh necessarily, but they're whole foods, so we'll include the millet, brown rice, basmati rice, things like that. So that would be my first step, and starting to feel in the body, when I'm shifting to healthier food, fresh food. And then the next thing would be seasonal, because there's different energies in food, fresh food, in different seasons, which is what nature intended, and we should be eating them in season, not out of season, and that gives you a different energy as well.
Right. So I guess one thing you very rightly pointed, this is what I keep talking to our audience also, that, when we look at foods from the modern perspective, we just go crazy about this many protein, this much protein this food has, or these, this food has this many calories, and let me cut down on that. One, of course, we don't understand energetics, but the other part is we also don't understand cooking techniques. That is equally important, because the entire energy you can change with the way you cook your foods, right? Yep. So this is, again, I think, a very big gap in how, how in modern ways we look at our foods today. Is it the same scenario in Western, culture also?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in cultures like I'm half Chinese, and I've spent a lot of time in China, but now I'm back in Australia, in the West. I actually think that it's even further removed in say, let's say China and India, when I was living there in Shanghai, because they're moving away from their traditional way of eating and connection with food, and adopting a Western diet, Western nutrition, Western mentality. Which for me, it feels like it's the wrong way around. I'm like, nobody wants to go backwards. And funny enough, a lot of people
much more futuristic. Like if you get back into traditional Chinese medicine, get back into Ayurveda, these concepts are so powerful, and these are the only concepts that have the power to heal you and reverse your conditions, not just treat you or fix you at a certain level. So that's where we have to really understand that these concepts are way more powerful and futuristic. The ones that we consider that are backwards are not backwards; they are much more forward.
Yep, absolutely, because they understood the connection, and that everything is connected, the way you grow your food and where you get your food from. But I also want to touch on a point you mentioned on nutrition. Like in Western nutrition, or even in Australia, I see it's shifting, but slowly. It's very much focused on calorie counting or the nutrients, like it zooms in on the food. Whereas macrobiotics and Ayurveda and even naturopathy and every traditional food culture takes a bigger approach, a bigger perspective, and sees, our food and us and even the organs in our body and the systems and the energies as a system, not just like, you have a heart problem. No, the heart's connected to everything else. And and that's also energy and the elements.
Exactly.
So that's the biggest difference, I think, is actually the perspective, the holistic perspective.
Exactly. So, okay, Kimberly, my next question, Western world, in macrobiotics is considered to be the beauty diet. All these, as far as I know, a lot of celebs are also, have started adopting these ancient practices, like, macrobiotic diet, like Madonna, I guess, was onto a macrobiotic diet, and various other, and that had also been one of their reasons for keeping with their energy levels and the way they look and feel. So, from energetics perspective, what do you think? How does it add on to our radiance and vitality? Like, what does it change inside so that, we just start to experience transformational changes everywhere, not just inside, but outside also?
Yeah, absolutely. And health comes from the inside, as you know, and I'm sure many people watching would agree. And I was thinking about this as well just this morning. In terms of radiance and vitality, it's often like we're always chasing to look healthier or have more energy or look more young or glowing skin. But if we look at what the opposite is, which is what we don't want, then we can start to see what kind of foods or energy bring that for us. And so I had words like dullness, darkness, tiredness, dim light or energy, heaviness, burden, and sluggish and slow. And so nobody wants to feel those, but we all do in modern day life because we're tired and so don't eat foods that give you dullness or heaviness or dark, skin, like, sugar, for
oily
example,
fried stuff and oily
dairy
fried stuff.
Or bad oils. Yeah.
Yes.
So dairy, like and I'm talking about like commercial dairy, like ice cream and chocolate and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the processed
The
stuff.
byproducts of dairy.
Yeah, those kinds of foods in Chinese medicine, and I'm sure in Ayurveda as well, bring mucus in the body. They bring phlegm. They bring heaviness, stagnation.
Stagnation,
These
yes.
are foods that we don't want. In terms of energy, stagnation is probably one of the worst things to have. It's like a
Yes.
blockage in the meridians, in the breathing, in all our organ systems. So that's useful to sometimes look at what we don't want and the energies of the words that I just mentioned. But then we can have fresh foods and seasonal ingredients. And then another category I would say is functional foods. I'm sure you have them in Ayurveda as well.
Yes.
But in macrobiotics, in Chinese medicine, very simple day-to-day things. A lot of people think you have to have very expensive superfoods.
No, it's so simple. It's very simple. And I would repeat that again. I repeat that in almost all my sessions, that simplicity is complicated. Like people don't understand simplicity simply.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. People are looking for either a one thing to fix them, a pill or a vegetable or one thing, or they think it's too complicated. And I said, yeah, we can have really simple things. So there's a lot of foods, and I'd love to share with you and your audience about to sort of reverse or prevent those words that I said, which is the energy that we don't want, the dullness, the tiredness, and the heaviness. So things like daikon radish, or radish in general, turnips, parsnips, vegetables that have high water content, not just lettuce, but I don't know, can you get lotus root where you are?
Lotus stem.
Is that a common?
We do get lotus stem. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's quite common in
really
India.
beautiful food. Yeah. And this is from Chinese medicine, but like lily bulbs and white fungus, like all different types of very collagen-rich, vitamin C-rich foods. Talking about skin, but it's really good for the lungs and the intestines, high in fiber as well. So again, we don't want to have blockage or stagnation. So lots of fiber, that's a more Western nutrition thing, but yeah, hydrating and fibrous foods will keep things moving and then allow us to, the body wants to be healthy and happy and glowing by itself. We just get in the way of it.
Exactly.
By eating.
You just need to create that environment inside. Yeah. So very interesting thing, Radha, you just talked of mushrooms, and I would want to share Radha with you also. I'm in touch with one of my friends who's just started this business of mushrooms, and she's in Indian setup only. She's growing. She's owned her own farm, and she's recently started growing all different kinds of mushrooms, and the ones that she cannot grow, she's procuring from the Himalayas, and specifically the reishi and these genoderma and all these super powerful mushrooms. And I see the irony. She's so much struggling to create awareness about mushrooms, and on the other hand, we see people just crowding towards these retail stores where all these foods which can really age you very faster, you'll see the line standing there wanting to buy those foods, and these super rich call it beauty foods or call it energy or vitality foods, people are still struggling to bring them and talk about them and get them into the market to explain that this is the right way to be and not the one that you're following. So that's the irony, like we don't actually recognize only what's good for us and what's not good for us.
Yeah, and somebody is
great. Thank you so much, Kimberly. I guess you shared really.
They get ill. Oh, sorry, you jumped. I was just going to say people don't.
I was just. Please carry on. Please carry on.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the mushrooms and foods that people don't know they need until it's too late. So if they're starting to get wrinkles or dull skin or they get an illness. Could be heart disease, cancer, diabetes, doesn't matter. That's when they suddenly will want to eat healthy foods. And that's fine too, but if we can introduce it earlier as day-to-day, putting those mushrooms and those daily superfoods and learning to get familiar with them. And just, I think the biggest thing is curiosity. A lot of people, if they're not used to it, then they won't eat it. But the world of mushrooms is fantastic. I mean, of course, you can eat too much of anything, and a good thing, and even too much mushrooms. But I didn't mention shiitake mushrooms or that kind of more Asian mushroom, dried ones especially.
Macrobiotic component. Shiitake is like very extensively used. And that's how I got into the science of mushrooms also. But then when I explored, I just found a different world altogether of mushrooms and the powerful powers of mushroom as a medicinal food. Yeah,
I mean, there's different mushrooms for different things. So the white ones are good for the skin. The black fungus is really good for the kidneys. So there's many different functional ways to enjoy them that is good for overall energy, but also vitality. Yeah.
Okay, so Kimberly, that brings me to another important question, like basis what I learned as a macrobiotic nutritionist also, we are supposed to first, at the very first place, when a client comes in, you are first supposed to figure out what are the imbalances, like which organ systems are blocked and clogged, and that's where you start applying these foods to bring about changes in those organ functionalities rather than thinking of those carbs and proteins and the modern way of looking at it. So it did happen to me. I don't know if I'm just trying to understand, like, does it happen in your practice also? Like, when you're working on specific organ system, then in that case, and plus you're also restricting a lot of foods which have brought imbalances to that organ system, which means you will have to cut down a lot of foods and start introducing foods which are really working deeply within you, right? For us, it's healing. For the people who are for the very first time experiencing this, it becomes more of a restrictive pattern of living, right? Do you think that happens to you as well?
Yeah, it's a matter of perspective and time as well. So depending when people come, if I always find people with a serious digestive issue are more willing to try things because they want to reverse, fix how they're feeling. I don't really like the word fix, but I know what you mean. So in some ways it can be restrictive, and I always remind people it's just for a short time to rebalance your digestion or your asthma or your diabetes or whatever it is. And then once you start to incorporate those ingredients, your new ingredients, you can go back to, the way you lived. And I think a myth behind things like macrobiotics or even Ayurveda or Chinese medicine is because it's quite new to people, because they're brought up in a Western food culture or modern food culture. And the idea of having roots and herbs and radish and mushroom, like it's brown rice, it's like, I don't know what that is.
I can understand, yeah.
But once they try it, and the biggest thing is once the body feels the difference and they see the change, then they go, oh, I don't want to eat so much white rice or white flour because, brown rice, black rice, red rice tastes better. And there's many reasons for that, not just nutritionally, but energetically, flavor-wise as well. So as long as people are open and curious to try it, they'll see the difference, and it won't become as weird or restrictive. In fact, for me, it opened up a lot more foods because I'd never eaten them before. Yes. And vegetables. I would never have eaten so many variety of vegetables before. So that's what I would say, just to keep an open mind.
Yeah, no, I guess that's the way to go, because I would rather want to share some experiences that I had. So initially, when I started my practice about 10 years back into macrobiotics, for a lot of people, I used to explain each and everything. We'll have to go off this, and we'll have to introduce this, and we have to work on your organ systems and this and that. And then I realized it used to be so overwhelming for the people, and they really used to consider, how am I going to do it? Over time, I realized that I don't need to speak anything of that sort, because they will start feeling it on its own. The things that I'm speaking is something that your body will start automatically telling you, and you will have that intuitive sense where you know what is working for me and what did not earlier work for me and how I should be living. So this is one change that I brought in my practice also. Now I just talk up to the point which is important for them to get started, and then I leave it on time and their body to experience what actually they're doing, with them, with those specific foods and all that. So I guess that's very important, because as you rightly said, the way we are brought up in the modern, understand everything from very quantitative perspective, this many this many this. So yeah, okay, Kimberly, I would now want to shift my question from foods to other practices that you are into. I'm quite about Qigong is something that really fascinates me a lot, and then you're into Hatha yoga also and yin yoga. How does Qi get impacted by all these other practices that you are into? And how does it actually come together along with the foods to bring about those transformational changes for radiance and vitality that we are just talking about? So just enlighten us on that.
Great question. There's a few words that come to mind, but if we start to I don't want to separate them, because Qigong and yoga and all types of yoga bring about movement and flow in the body. And there's many different levels of energy, right? So we'll just talk about the physical body for today. The emotional body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, it's all going to be affected. But I find that a lot of people, especially in yoga and wellness, actually need to come back to the physical body, the one that we can touch and see, because it's very easy to go up and meditate and feel happy and light, but you still have to deal with your body. So Qigong and yoga Those more dynamic styles of movement just literally bring movement and openness in the body, in the cells, the muscles, the tissue, the joints. So that's really important. A lot of us are sitting a lot, myself included, sitting too much. We're not moving the energy through the body. So it's like exercise or fitness, let's say. Then things like hatha yoga, but definitely yin yoga, restorative yoga are more movement as well, but also movement of the mind and slowing it down, because we're also very busy when we're doing active types of exercise. Activity. So yeah, so it's important to not only move the body, but then calm down or bring some rest
and activity.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of us are too yang, and we think, oh, we've got to do 4 hours of yoga, and I have to do like Ashtanga yoga, and I have to be like sweating, and I'm like, well, some people just need to breathe.
That's the modern scenario. This is what is happening. Like, I do get some clients like, I'm not able to lose weight because I'm doing 2 hours of gymming. I'm doing 3 hours of gymming, 1.5 in the morning, 1.5 in the evening. I really have to cancel them. Yeah. And it's not easy because, these concepts are so ingrained in their mind that the more we exercise, the more the results are going to be. So we don't focus on that rest and relaxation concept at all. It's just the activity, like, more of the yang side of who we are.
Yeah, it's like more is better when it's not always the case.
But it's not. You end up damaging yourself more when you're doing all that more stuff.
That's right.
So, yeah. So, Kimberly, I will have an open question now, and I will also open the platform for our audience to ask any questions.
Sure.
In the meantime, I have one question for you. What would you, apart from whatever we've discussed, is there anything else that you would want to add on to this entire concept that you're talking about, chi and energy and radiance, vitality, and inside out, like how everything comes together? Something that I haven't asked, but still you think is important for everybody to know.
We haven't. I mean, it's a very short chat, and just to say hello, but and introduce the idea of energy in food and everything around us. But the fundamental principle of Chinese medicine, but also macrobiotics, is the 5 elements. So we don't have time to go into it, but I want to just bring to awareness for people to look into what are the 5 elements. What do they mean? What are the different layers of them in terms of the season, in terms of the personality, in terms of what that means for my energy, and also there's one cycle for the day. So making sure like the springtime of the day is the morning and you have enough energy there, but also calming down at the end of the cycle of the day in the water element and just relaxing. So just start to get curious about that, because it really helps understand how energy works, and then you can apply it to food. With you or with me, we could.
I know.
That's what we do, help people with. So that's what I would suggest. Just get curious about it. Yeah.
So, Kimberly, that also gives me, just, a question just came up with me. For a lot of people, I think diet still gets sorted out, and exercise also to some extent gets sorted out. Sleep is one area that doesn't get sorted out with a lot of people, because even if you try explaining what is the role of sleep when it comes to you as a whole, everything, like probably any health condition that you're suffering from has some connection with the sleep. How severe or minor actually depends, how you are treating your sleep. And specifically during these pandemic times, sleeping in time is something that's actually has been taken very for granted. Like, with all that time in hand, people are actually slipping off late in their beds and waking up late, even though they are trying to follow good dietary patterns.
Yeah.
But sleep is something that's been taken for granted. So from Chi perspective, what would you have to say for the sleep thing and its importance when it comes to?
Yes, so sleep is really key as part of restoring your energy. And as I said, the topic of qi or energy is a big one in macrobiotics and Chinese medicine. And there's many different types and layers of qi, and I won't necessarily go there today. But if we don't rest, we don't have energy. That's a simple fact. We know that in the West as well. In the 5 element theory, there's also a cycle of the day. So if we aren't sleeping well at night, it's definitely affected by what you've done and eaten and activities you've performed during the day or every day. There's also a really key point is to try and sleep before 11 p.m. For me, it's fine, but for some people, it's very hard. because, like you said, they're busy, especially with social media or the news or
Right.
movies or Netflix. But it's really, really key, and that's because the liver and the gallbladder are resting, cleansing, rebooting between 11 and 1 and 1 till 11 and 1 and 1 till 3. So it's very important to sleep before 11, and that's what like every Chinese doctor, every acupuncturist, every macrobiotic person will tell you.
Yeah. Yes.
Just to sleep by 11. That's like the simplest thing I can explain and share,
Yeah.
but it's really important so that the rest of the day and the month and the year you're living in the patterns of nature and the cycles of yeah, you know, the sun.
So
I mean,
do
if you can
we,
sleep at 9 10, it's even better.
yeah. So do we say that that time between somewhere around 11 when the liver and gallbladder is active and just cleansing you inside is also the time when that is the key time when your body is regenerating the energy for you. Like if you miss on to that
Yeah.
time of sleep, in that case, you've missed on to regenerating your energy.
That's right. So if you sleep at midnight or 2 a.m., then the next day you'll feel the after effect of it. Your liver, over time, and people who do this every day, the function of the liver will be compromised for sure. It won't be
And
able to
then when
detox. And
Right. And then when it is about liver, it is about your whole health, whether it be diabetes or obesity or any
yeah,
health condition that we can think about. And your radiance also, like, you start to look very dull and it reflects everywhere in your persona, right?
yeah. And the liver is connected with the eyes. So if we want to
Yeah,
have vitality and radiance, it comes from how bright we see the world and how our eyes are glowing or
exactly.
not. So absolutely.
Exactly. So such subtle concepts, like, we don't actually relate to. For
Yeah.
eyes, it's just an eye doctor for us, but it's so much at the back
Yeah.
of it, like, organ systems working and that energy working and all that. Nice.
Yeah.
Great. So I think I will again ask people if they have any questions, or else I think we are done with the session. If there is anything else, Kimberly, you would want to add on till the time we'll be there for 2 minutes. Let's see
Um,
if there are any questions.
Yeah, sure. You see if there's any other questions. The only
Yeah.
other thing, I mean, I was just brainstorming some notes as well before,
Mm-hmm.
would be in terms of the 5 elements, is the last thing I would share is that there's 5 flavors as well. And of course,
Yeah,
there's many different
30.
flavors.
It's the same
It's
concept
very
in Ayurveda
important.
also.
Yeah,
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 it's the same thing. And
exactly.
the
So,
beauty of this, sorry, I'm just cutting you there, but I guess this is
yeah,
important.
no.
So like, I started macrobiotics and I got into TCM, started TCM, and then now I'm more into Ayurveda. And one awareness that came up was that so beautiful to see, like, Ayurveda happened in India. TCM, macrobiotics is a far off land modality that happened in China and Japan, and years back when there was no
Yeah.
connectivity in the two cultures. Still, if you look
Mm-hmm.
deeper into what are the concepts basis which they came up with, these concepts are all based on balance, whether it is Ayurveda,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is yoga. The terminology is different. Like, in TCM, the
Yeah.
terminology is yin yang in balance. In Ayurveda, it is vata, pitta, kapha. But it's the
Mm-hmm.
concept of balance only which is playing around, and how you understand it, these modalities understood it in a different way, but then everything boils
Mm.
down to balance. So which also brings us
Absolutely.
to a concept: overdoing anything is something that's not going to work for you, whether it is over exercising, getting over into some
Mm-hmm.
specific kinds of foods, and knowing your body
Mm-hmm.
and then applying foods and exercise. I guess that's the key to balance and health and radiance vitality that we're talking about, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my tagline is balancing life energies, actually.
Yes,
Um, because
your
it's
work
all
is
about everything is
amazing. Yes.
energy. So
Yes.
everything, exactly as you said, it is about balance. And I just saw a question in there.
Yes, it's
Actually, I
about
think it's
what
from
about the
Phil.
lungs in terms of.
Um,
So
so
please
I'll
answer that.
answer that
Yep.
in 1 second. But yeah, definitely balance. So through flavor, through seasons, through your day, through your month. And it's not about living in that. Like, we don't want to get too strict with it. But a lot of people are living in the extremes. So if we talk about flavor, most people are eating far too salty foods and then far too sweet, and they forget about all the other flavors in between. Just
That's right.
explore different flavors. So Thelma asked about, thank you for the question, Thelma, lungs and sleep. So that's a important one too in terms of lung health. The lung organ pair, every organ has a pair in 5 elements, is the large intestine. So in terms of sleep, I would actually say that the large intestine is not more affected, but it'll be affected first in terms of your bowel movements and your elimination every day. A lot of people who have constipation, there's many reasons behind it, but one could be your body's just tired, your metabolism is not moving, you're sluggish in that area, so sleeping late. The lung large intestine time, though, is between 3 and 5 and 5 and 7. So it's when people actually wake up. A lot of people wake up 4 or 5 a.m. And that actually is more to do with letting go, the emotion of holding on to anger or frustration or things you haven't done or relationships or anything. So it's actually more about that in terms of the lung, because we contract into the lungs. So I'm just answering that question. It's a bit off the topic for today, but to try and ensure you can sleep through. And if you do wake up at 4 and 5, like do some breathing or visualization, like make sure you get back to sleep if you can. So that's a great question.
I would just want to add here, like one of my experience with one of the clients, like this client used to get, so he developed this asthmatic condition because of his sinus, like the problem just set in deeper and deeper and deeper. And then there was this time early morning between 3 to 5, almost regularly, that through the day he used to be okay, like, more or less he could breathe, but at night, somewhere between 4ish in the morning, he used to start to get all that breathless kind of problems. And it did not happen through the day anytime, just between 3 to 5 a.m. anytime, like somewhere around 3:30 a.m. or 4 a.m. And then we worked with them. We eliminated dairy for him. And then we brought about a lot of other changes which were lung supporting. And so beautifully, this entire problem actually just vanished on its own. Like he did not even have to get onto the inhalers also. So of course, that energetics definitely works. Like, we just need to get into it and start to understand how it actually gets applied.
Yeah. I saw a question earlier about fruitarian and liquid diets. That was a question, I think. It's gone now on my screen, but
it's there. It's there. Yeah, it's there.
What do I think about this? My personal opinion. I think all types of diets or things you want to try, whether it's liquid or paleo or keto or raw food or whatever it is that it's not balanced. That's the simple answer. To go the next level, it would be if we can eat in the middle, which is a nice balanced combination of, we'll go with proteins, fats, and carbs, it's fine, is best. And if we start doing just one thing, like just fats or just raw or just liquids, it's not a balanced state and the body's not going to get enough nutrients. On the topic of liquid, though, in particular, we've got teeth. We're supposed to chew our food and saliva and a digestive system. So if we're just drinking smoothies, soups, whatever in liquid, all our food in liquid form over a long term, if you want to do it for 1 day or 3 days, it doesn't matter really. It could be cleansing, it could be lightening the digestion. But long term, the spleen and the stomach don't like it. They get really lazy. It could be a little bit damp and like just heavy in there with just liquids. And we get the whole digestive tract and the intestines, they get really lazy. They're supposed to work for us like this. So we don't want to get them like soft and loose. And that's when things like IBS, a leaky gut, that can happen when the intestines aren't strong. And macrobiotics is really good for strengthening the intestines, just on a side note.
Right. And I guess it's related to seasonal also. Like you have to really see which season are you in before incorporating all these concepts of fruitarian and liquidarian, right?
Yeah, I think it's fine for I would say it's fine for the right person in the right season. If they have the right, intention or reason to do it. A few days is no problem, maybe even a week. If you want to do water fast or juice fast or anything, smoothies, it's okay. But I don't know that you would be getting like that whole food, nutrient dense concept. And you're definitely not chewing and using your digestion, which is probably why that people do it for a few days to rest. That's okay. But I don't think it's a long-term sustainable, I don't like
that balance is the key again. I guess that's where everything boils down.
Yeah. You could use it if you are bringing yourself in, if you are eating so much meat and fried chicken and foods days, that's okay. You're coming back into some sort of balance.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. So, Kimberly, I guess we have one last question, which is somebody's asking, is dry scalp related to yeast infection? Could you please explain about it?
Yes. I'm not a dry scalp expert, but there's, in macrobiotics, we would say that any kind of dry skin, wherever it is on the body, even your nails and your hair, it's a form of discharge, like it's stuff that's coming out of the body. So it could be. I would need to see exactly how much and where, and ask a few more questions to get to the bottom of what it is. But it's usually the body is overloaded and it's trying to release something from the body. So it could be, yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are with Ayurveda.
No, I guess it's the bottom line concept again is the same that so it could be one which age you are in, like, you know, if it is a perimenopause stage, in that case, you know, things automatically start to get a lot of drier for you. Your body starts to get drier. And what Ayurveda says is that this is the Vata time for you, like you are more getting into the dry phase. And if you are in that age group, in that case, you really have to focus a lot on hydration and oiling and lubrication, because internally all those elements that were working for you earlier are no more working for you. So then you have to have some external support, whether it be through right kinds of fats and foods, whether it be through body oiling or increasing your water intake, hydration level. So this is what Ayurveda broadly has to talk about it. And of course, a lot to do, I believe, with the kind of products that are coming in. Like, you know, we are just experimenting with anything and everything which is there in the market, which is toxicating our body to a level where these toxins have actually started to play around. So for once, you know, when you wash your hair with a specific shampoo and you feel good, and then you want to move on to another one and third one, and you know, it's a never ending story. Like, it might feel good, but internally you are holding a lot of inside. So someday it will start to come out in maybe, you know, any kind of skin condition or any kind of health condition cropping out of there. So we have to, again, as you said, we have to look at a holistic, bigger picture, what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are lots of hydrating foods. As I said, a lot of the mushrooms. In terms of menopause in Chinese medicine, it's all about nourishing the yin, which is the blood and the lungs, large intestine, that element, with water-rich foods. It's not only just drinking water, but foods that have a lot of natural moisture and good fats. For us.
Something like cucumbers and coconut water, and you know, I guess all these.
And coconut. Right? Oils, and also go back to the funguses, the mushrooms, the white ones. They look like coral.
So these white
those
ones
are really good.
Fresher ones to be used, or the dried ones?
Either is fine. Either is okay. I can't get where I am in Sydney. It's not as easy to get the fresh one. So the dried one I can get in like a Chinatown or a Chinese store. They're really good to add, and also lily bulb. Is really nice as well.
So I think I really need to start value my friend a lot, who's actually, you know, taken all these pains to start her own farm and really start talking about all these different kinds of mushrooms. So she gifted one of those to me, and that's why I asked that question, because it was a fresh white mushroom. So I you know, had it for the first time. Otherwise, I was. And she's doing, so they're maintaining this white mushroom on a regular basis, done in a fresh form only. So they've created that setup. So yeah, I guess good foods, and we really need to value the people who are coming up with such concepts, like, you know, medicinal foods in their picture. Yeah, great. So definitely. Okay, so great, Kimberly. I guess we had a really nice session with you. I think we will wind up the session, but before I wind up, people, whosoever is listening to us, please go and check out Kimberly's website and her Instagram link. So Kimberly, if you could just give a shout out about where people can find you, and then just follow you, because you're doing really good stuff in energetics.
Oh, thank you. And I also love what you do with glowing health as well. It's such a wonderful concept.
Yeah, thank you.
So Qi Food Therapy. So Qi is just QI, food therapy.
You could just drop it in the comment. I guess that would help people to find you.
Yeah, sure. And then it's also the same it's just qifoodtherapy.com. So that's Instagram, Qi Food Therapy, and then qifoodtherapy.com. It's very green. I have a logo. My logo is an artichoke, and that's a whole other topic. But
just check out her website. I was just going through it yesterday.
Vegetable.
It's beautiful. Yes, and so it's such a, you know, good vibes just looking at those. And once you start doing it, you know, it's altogether a different world you entered. And for everybody listening there, please check out, Kimberly has just written some ebook, Kimberly, and these are all about, in a very layman language, explaining all these concepts of energetics that we've just discussed. So if anybody is interested more in understanding all these concepts, you can just check out the PDFs that Kimberly has just released. I am definitely going to get some of them. I just love the concept. So, and more so because, you know, you talk of these concepts in such a simple way that even a layman can relate to what you're saying. So
just bring it back to basics. And I also, lastly, I also have some online courses coming out. One's on 5 elements and cycles. So it's, again, very simple on the 5 elements. And then we go into each element and some food therapy ingredients. for each. So
Great.
yeah.
So definitely there's something that's coming up at Swarasya also that we're doing soon, and we would just love to have you there for some of the programs that you're doing right now, which is around
Yeah.
plant-based cooking and all that. Yeah. So definitely I'll get in touch with you for that also. But for now, I guess we can just wind up the session. I don't see any questions anymore. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for being with us. It was really an
Thank
informative, nice
you.
session, and I will definitely be connected for a lot of other things, specifically from the energetics perspective. So I think we can wind up the session now.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.